If there's been a flaw in the European debate inside the Conservative Party, it's that we've allowed it to be characterised as the Little Englanders' response. In other words, that we dislike the European Union because it's too foreign. We must turn that perception on its head, because quite the reverse is true. Most of us believe that the problem with the European Union in an interdependent and sensitive global economy is that it's not foreign enough. And by this I mean that too often European leaders behave as though they're still at the centre of the global economy. Too often the debate amongst European leaders are introspective and retrospective, with too much EU navel-gazing at a time when vision is needed that is outward-looking and forward-looking. But there are growing fears that in a global context, the EU is not only increasingly uncompetitive, but potentially anti-competitive. The labour and social costs, which were seen as improving the quality of life, might have been workable in an era when Europe was a dominant global economic force. But to continue with unaltered or even extended rights and benefits at a time when the European economy has come to be pitied rather than admired is simply delusional. And all of this has been brought into sharp focus by the crisis in the Eurozone. The Euro was always a flawed project. Intellectually, it was never clear whether it was a political or economic entity. The consequence is that no one has any idea how to get out of the euro in a crisis. At its launch, off the euro sailed, lauded as unsinkable as the Titanic once was, and still no one worried about the lifeboats. We are no clearer about how the eurozone will ultimately be constituted. But whatever model is ultimately chosen to deal with the eurozone crisis, it will have profound consequences for the United Kingdom and our relationship with the EU. I do not believe that Britain's national interest is served by its current relationship with the EU. I too believe that a referendum will be vital, but I believe that having one now would be a huge error with great tactical risks. Instead, I would like to see Britain negotiate a new relationship with the EU based on economic rather than political considerations and set out in clear and unambiguous language. We must free ourselves from the dogma of ever closer union that has been a handicap on every government since the 1970s. We should not wait for the other EU leaders to recognise the failure of the ill-conceived euro before we set out what we want for the British people. Britain's destiny is not a debating issue for leaders on the continent. It must be made in Britain. This is the time for us to rise to the challenge. Thank you.